Morning, Hugo, and very good morning to all you gentlemen and ladies, I must say, because it's hardly what I might define as a diverse audience. I can count from here about less than 7 or 8 women in this audience, and I think that's also one of the big challenges we have within not just the retail industry, but more specifically within the finance function in the retail industry, and the need to get more women CFOs into companies. But more importantly, I think the first thing I'd like to do is to welcome all of you to this conference. We have one which is called the Retail Leadership Summit. We have a whole bunch of chapter-wise conferences held in Bangalore and Chennai and Coimbatore and Kolkata and Delhi, etc. And then we have specific domain conferences where we have a technology conference, we have a finance conference, we have a people's conference which is called Manning Modern Retail. And as Ashwin and I were just discussing, I think some of the more compelling issues that faces the industry today are issues that we need to get our arms around. And one of the most compelling ones is about people and the lack and availability of quality people for the retail industry, and we need to start figuring out how to put some minds around addressing that particular problem. But more importantly, I think what we are seeing within the retail industry is a whole lot of change. Change which is driven by the fact that today we have more digital within the industry than what we had 3 years back. Today, on the other hand, we have more pressures on the industry in terms of various governance standards that we have to live up to. So whether it is ESG, whether it is cybersecurity, whether it's in terms of data privacy, whether it's in terms of various committees relating to, say, POSH and various other things. There are several more pressures which are there on a company today, and because of which the governance standards have been considerably elevated. The third part of it is that we all learned during COVID that we could actually, A, work from home. We could make sure that we approved budgets, we approved payments. We managed to get auditors to do remote auditing, close out the audits for that particular year, and give us a report. And we managed to hold board meetings virtually. We managed to hold an AGM virtually. So what it just threw open at that point of time, before we actually faced that situation, was things are possible. What we would have otherwise not considered as a possibility suddenly became very possible because of the pressures of COVID. And after we have got out of COVID, we've also realized that life has changed. Because during COVID, when stores were closed, the biggest imperative for all companies was preserve cash. And preserve cash meant, what are my committed payments and what are the accruals that I can get? And when you realize that you don't have revenues, but you have payments, then a lot of focus became, how do I ensure that I can keep my burn in line with the cash on hand? And in that context, several new roles were played by CFOs. Roles such as how to be able to optimize, how to be able to rationalize, how to be able to make sure that we insource and outsource. How do we ensure that we can actually connect with the customer even if the store is closed? How do we make sure that we ramp up on digital payments? How do we ensure that we can actually fulfill a customer's requirement even if they're not coming in to a store? And in all of this, what we did see is that we saw that the CFO played a very, very important role. So to go back to what Hugo was mentioning earlier, it's not just about the whisper, it's about the shout. And what we are seeing today is that the role of the CFO has gone from merely being a whisperer, saying that these are the reports of the last month, these are the requirements in terms of capital, these are the controls that I have exercised, and the role of the CFO from merely being, let's say, a steward of capital and a financial controller has today shifted to becoming a more active business partner. Somebody who then works very closely with the business leaders in order to be able to make sure that the company improves in terms of performance. How do you adopt a new diversification? How do you create new processes? How can we make sure that we actually reduce risk while also increasing innovation? There are several such factors which CFOs today are getting concerned about and they're getting involved with, which is very different from what the CFOs used to do in the past. Even if you look at, let's say, the requirement for high quality CFOs, what we can see certainly, at one time there was a huge requirement for technology. If you look at maybe 3-4 years down, 2019, 20, 21, when a lot of companies were actually moving online because of COVID, there was a large requirement for technology talent. But today what you're beginning to see is that given the several pressures that companies are under, there is a large requirement for financial talent. And even if you look at the CFO salaries, you can see that there's a significant growth in terms of CFO salaries over the last couple of years. So whether you are a listed company where you have a full-fledged CFO, investor relations requirements, etc., or you might be an unlisted company aspiring to go through an IPO, you might be an investor-driven company where you have either private equity or VC funds on your cap table, or you might just be a startup. But the role of the CFO in all these situations kind of remains the same. The focus on different aspects changes as the company grows. So as once somebody told me that, traditionally the role of the CFO was actually called CFNO, which meant CF and NO. And NO was meant to be that if you go to the CFO at any point of time, their role is to tell you, no, it can't be done. No, we cannot approve this payment. No, your OTB is already exceeded. No, this is not part of the process. No, we have not received the signature on that document, and because of which we have to not pass a payment. Whereas now what they say is that the CFO's definition has become again CFNO, but here it is CFKNOW. And this no means that your awareness of what is happening around in your business, technology, people, leadership, trends, requirements, all of these are suddenly increasing, and you cannot afford to be verticalized in your knowledge, but you have to now be horizontal in your understanding and exposure of what is required for the business, and there has to be cooperation and collaboration between you and the outside world as well as your own inside world to ensure that these companies can now adapt to the new requirements of the future. So I'd just like to leave these thoughts with you about what I felt was the changing role of the CFO, and may I wish all of you a wonderful day in terms of interaction, experience sharing, knowledge sharing, as well as understanding new perspectives about not just your role, but about the business at large. So thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen.